status. He should have given him the status right in the beginning. But it seems that it is an evolution of thought than reception of an office from Allah. Because he gradually goes on increasing his own claims to his own statushood. So they say that first he told the people around, Anzir Ashirataka, you warn your own family members around you. And then he said that I am for the Ummul Qura, Waman Hola. I am for the Meccans and for those who live around Mecca. So he further increased. Then they say when he reached Medina, then he started addressing Ahle Kitab and further increased his field when he came into contact with a larger people. And then after all, he decided to become the prophet of the whole world and declared himself to be Rahmatul Lil Alameen. This is the step-by-step progress of the status of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which appears to their eye a very strange phenomena. And when they analyze it according to their own worldly, corrupt minds, they say obviously it is not strange, it is but human. It is only strange when you look at it from the point of view of a revelation. But when you begin to see it as a human evolution, an evolution of human thought, and gradual increase in one's claims, then the riddle is solved, it's no problem anymore. Now, exactly the same attitude has been taken by the enemies of Hazrat Masih Maud, and they have raised the same type of objections against him. And they laugh at it and they simply cannot understand. Sometimes he says, I'm Mahdi, then he went on to claim that he was Messiah. Then he further claimed he was also a Christian because he contacted the Hindus around them and thought, why not? And ultimately became every prophet. You know, that is, to become every prophet means to address the whole world. Practically it is the one and the same thing. And this is a phenomena which you also can't understand innocently, not in hostility, but just it doesn't appeal to you why it should be so. That's right, isn't it? Now I'll explain why. In fact, therein lies the proof of the prophets. It is an established fact that if somebody is a liar who makes false claims, he does that for the sake of some worldly gain or popularity, to become a leader of some sort, to gain the favor of public opinion, and so on and so forth. Not that he wants everybody to turn against himself. Have you ever seen a man making false claims to attract hostility instead of friendship? No one has, unless he is an insane man. So, you have observed the politicians. They sometimes issue statements in mistake, misjudging the mood of the people, and when they see people have not well received it, and instead they have turned hostile, they immediately begin to retrieve their words and say, oh, it is not what we said. In fact, it is the press, you know, the press of the country and all that, how big liars they are and so on. And so we never said that. We said this and they have misinterpreted. Because they are not honest true people. When they see their objective defeated, they make a volte-face and turn about. Now, this is quite simple and logical, because no sane man would make a claim which makes him unpopular, and if he has done it by mistake, to make a further claim in the same direction to become more unpopular. If he is false, he cannot do it. So if the first claim of a prophet makes him popular, then this interpretation of the Western scholars and the enemies of the prophets, wherever they are, could be understandable and acceptable. That when he claimed to be the prophet of his family, for instance, he was so well received and so well honored that he thought, why not a bit wider, become a wider. And he started then addressing the Meccans and their people around them. That could be understandable. But the treatment which was meted out to him after making the first claim, as they put it, was so harsh, so severe, so terrible, that the most popular man of the whole Arabia was immediately transformed into the most hated person of Arabia. So if that was the result of a false claim, no sane man could have traveled further in that direction and made still bigger claims. It's inconceivable. Only a true man can do it who cannot escape this situation. A supreme being higher than he orders him about and he is helpless. He says what he hears. And regardless of whether he gains popularity or attracts hostility. Now this is exactly the situation with Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. Had he been well received when he claimed to be a Mahdi by the Muslims around, then he should have thought of something bigger, because the first experiment would have proved to be extremely successful. But what happened was that all his friends turned into enemies. And even his family members deserted him. He was left alone, who a night before was the most popular rising star of India in the religious heaven. And suddenly he is deserted and abandoned completely to his own fate, not only abandoned, but pursued in hostility and with extremely dangerous designs against him. From all sides, the enemies, the ulama, who turned enemies, they called him bad names, they spread false propaganda against him, they issued decrees that whoever murders him will go straight to heaven, and so on and so forth. So after this, why should he have made a greater and wider false claim, having turned his own people against himself? Why did he dare to turn the British Empire against him by making a claim which was extremely unpalatable to the British Empire? Because British Empire had a very deeply established policy that in the colonies they should spread Christianity. And they knew that through the spread of Christianity, they would gain stability in their political rule as well. So they were spending billions of rupees in their colonies to convert people to Christianity. Now, if Hazrat Masih Maud was a false man, having experimented with the masses around him, he could never have dared to make the British people, the British Empire, his enemies, to antagonize them. But this claim of Messiah is exactly that, or exactly what it serves that purpose exactly. By making the claim of Messiah, you know what he in reality declared? The first thing was that the only son begotten by your godmother was not a son of God at all. And he never died on crucifixion. These two claims totally annihilate Christianity and demolish it. Deny the sonhood of Christ and deny his death upon crucifixion. The whole of Christianity falls to the ground and collapses entirely. So that was the claim which had such bitterness against the British people. And so he became extremely unpopular with the Christians, and they showed their bitterness by involving him in extremely false libels, and he was sued by the leaders of the Church of India. Not only once, at many occasions. Once, under charge of murder, he was sued by a bishop. What was his name? Martin Clark. Yes. So that was the extent. Now, after experimenting upon both his co-religious people around him and his rulers, still he was not satisfied with the enmity he had excited, and went to claim that he was also a Christian. So the the most powerful people of India at that time were not Muslims but Hindus, and thereby he antagonized them as well. And you know what happened with his debates with Lekram and his duel and so on and so forth. The whole of India was put afire by these claims, both Muslims and Hindus, and Christians for that matter. And again, as if that was not enough, the people who were the strongest just in his vicinity, living around him, were Sikhs. Qadian was surrounded by ferocious types of Sikhs who were very harsh in their conduct and extremely hostile. Once they turned hostile, there was no limit known to them. And suddenly, out of the blue, he started claiming that the founder of their religion, Guru Baba Nanak Sahib, was not at all a founder of a new religion. He was simply a convert to Islam. And he proved that by declaring that if you go and see the Chola Baba Nanak yourself, observe it, which was preserved in Dera Baba Nanak and still is, and which was exhibited once a year. Hazrat Masih Maud Islam claimed that if you go and observe that Chola Baba Nanak, you will see the Holy Quran inscribed on it, Kalima La ilaha illallah and Surah Fatiha and Durood Sharif and such things. So he said if he were the inventor or founder of a new religion, why on earth should he have inscribed the Holy Quran, verses of the Holy Quran and Kalima and such things as belong to the Muslim faith upon his chola? And that chola is the most sacred remnant of Guru Baba Nanak Sahib. And that chola was worn by him till the last breath. So that is to say that once he accepted Islam, he never renounced it. Now this extremely antagonized the Sikhs. So much so that I still remember during our childhood, when we used to go out to preach Ahmadiyya to the people around. In the Sikh villages, we met with very severe hostility. And we had to go there in groups and well armed with gulel. That was a very popular weapon with Ahmadi boys in Qadian. So that we could run away when they attacked, and during the process with a barrage of gulelas, we could stop them in their onslaught. And because things happened, you know, every time people went out, now and then we heard that that boy was beaten and that boy was beaten and that boy was deprived of his property and this and that. So the hostility had still continued till, let's say, till 44 or so. So that was one of the claims which he made later on. So that is not comprehensible, of course. If you look at it from human point of view, if a human being had invented all these claims, either he
he should be accepted as a totally insane man, or he can't behave in this manner. It's impossible. But if he was really from God, then such things happen. Allah testifies him, puts him to trial, and wants to find out that for my sake, is he ready to face greater bitterness, more hostility, and still have faith in me, and still believe that none on earth can destroy him. Only such a person can make such claims. So it is the proof of prophethood that there is a graduation in their claims, despite the fact that every step in their claim is extremely bitter to the enemies and creates hostility all around it. Yes, please.
आपने वाज़ेह कर दी कि किसी जुम्मा में जो इत्तिबा सानी में फरमाया था कि न्यूयॉर्क में खड़ी है जिसके वो कमेटी है जिसके मेंबर
12 scientists, top scientists who are members of perhaps a few more or less. What do you want to know learn about that talk?
वो आपने फरमाया था 2 मिनट रहते हैं.
I explained that. You know, it is not. Please sit down. He is referring to a clock which I mentioned in one of my sermons when I told the audience that there is a clock somewhere in New York or Washington, I don't remember where, but in America anyway, which is being controlled by some elite of the scientific scholars. For instance, as I remember, there are 12 Nobel Prize winner members who govern and administer the clock. Now that clock is a very simple affair. It's not run by machine. It is as simple as a child's clock. Only you move the hands with your own fingers and put them anywhere you please. But the minds which control those fingers, in fact, that clock is run by those minds. They are top experts on their subject. There are scientists as well as some other very highly scholarly people who know the world and what is happening around, some observers of political phenomena and so on and so forth. Now, whenever there are times of crisis in the world, they get together and judge how close the world has become to the ultimate catastrophe, that is the atomic warfare. And they, of course, move the hand of the clock with their fingers, backward or forward. But it is the mind which is controlling that. When they judge that time has come nigh, then they move the hand, minute hand, to closer to the 12, closer to number 12. Because the hour hand always remains very close to the figure 12. This they have decided that the hour has come for mankind. But whether the minute has arrived or not, this is to be decided. So I told that when I was studying the previous chart, I was surprised by a fact that when there was an anti-Ahmadiyya hostility on top, that clock, the minute hand moved closer to the 12. And when there were normal conditions, not because it was directly being controlled of this phenomenon, by this phenomena, but it coincided in a very strange manner that when there was peace as far as Ahmadis were concerned, that minute hand began to move backwards. So I told them that now that anti-Ahmadiyya sentiment is at its peak in Pakistan, the hand is moving closer and it's only left 2 minutes from 12 o'clock. That shows, I infer, that if it is not just a chance, if it is a sort of coincidence, which has also meaning. I didn't claim that positively this is a decree of Allah, but I said one is wonderstruck, one really wonders that is it that Allah so governs things that when people want to destroy Ahmadiyya, Allah warns the world that by the same process you will bring about your own ultimate destruction. Because if you decide to destroy my people, then I will not let you live, because you can't live without purpose and without an objective in life. That was the inference I was drawing from that simile or analogy of clock.
तो आप जैसा सनत आपकी आपका पाकिस्तान में एक काम सुना जिसमें आपने दो का लफ्ज़ बहुत ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल किया है, दो खड़ी शब्द
ये तो मुहावरा है।
सर यह दुश्मन बदलवार के लिए दो कदम दो तीन पद है।
दो कदम हाँ वो तो ये मुहावरा है। You don't translate it into time period, either 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. That is stretching too far. दो कदम चलो, दो घड़ी, ये सारे उर्दू के मुहावरे हैं। जिसे मुराद है कि थोड़ी देर लंबा आसानी मिलेगा। और दूसरे के कदम जो हैं, they also mean differently from according to the people to whom those qadam are attributed. There are giant steps sometimes. There are steps of tiny people, and there are steps of nations as well, not individual steps. So steps can be interpreted only when you know whose steps they are. If they belong to a giant, the steps would be very big, of course. And if they apply to a nation, they mean a different thing altogether. For instance, the same idiomatic usage of time is witnessed in the Holy Quran. سَنَّفْرِغُ لَكُمْ أَيُّهَا الثَّقَلَانِ. Very soon, quickly, we are going to tackle you and be free to tackle you. Now that prophecy of the Holy Quran, applies to this ultimate destruction of the world which has not yet happened. And 1400 years ago, Allah said, سَنَّفْرُغُ لَكُمْ أَيُّهَا الثَّقَلَانِ. Then, about Qiyamah, Allah Ta'ala tells us that اقترب الساعة وانشق القمر. Moon has been observed split into two, and that shows that the day of judgment or the day of the doomsday has become nigh, very close. And what is very close? 1400 years ago, and still we don't know. So if the doomsday is to be interpreted according to the non-Ahmadi judgment, then it is very close, is a very long period. Now when you say very close, very soon, a step or two beyond, in reality, these things do not indicate time, but certainty. Always, in every language, the true import of this expression is always certainty. That whether now or a bit later, but this is positive, this has to happen, and nobody can change it. This is the real meaning of this. Not exactly the shorter measure of time which you know. First of all, tell me how many more questions you have to ask. So I can tell the others to wait.
I have only one more question.
After this?
Yes.
I'll protect him first, and then if nobody comes forward, then we will start. Right? Sit close to the microphone.
why there are different versions or explanations of some of the events that happened in the life of Prophet Muhammad, be peace upon him, in different books.
For instance?
Well, I was reading a book for Ahmadi children, and there was written that Prophet Muhammad and his party were resting on a certain place, and then he was hanging his sword on a branch, and he rested. He slept under a tree, and the enemy who had been following him, he wanted to have an opportunity to kill him. So he went into the place and secured his sword and just took out his sword and pointed at him. And then Prophet Muhammad woke up in surprise.
What were the others doing? The party
well, and then he said, "Who can save you?"
No, I tell you. You said as Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him and his party were resting under the tree.
No, he was resting
Alone at that time.
unguarded. So then he woke up in surprise, and the man said, "Who can save you now?" And then he said, "Allah." And at that moment, he got up. And in that other book, he just got up. And in this book, which I read before, just when he said Allah, the sword fell out of the hand of the enemy.
The sword?
Fell out of the hand.
Yes, right.
So why these two versions are different?
I asked them who have written these versions. Because I don't know who has written what, first of all. Number two, if you want to ask me which one is correct, that I can tell you. But why somebody has committed a mistake, that I don't know.
No, because I was wondering, I didn't know.
Yes, but you can ask this question if you want to. Which one is the correct?
Okay, which one is the correct?
Oh, yeah, that's right. The second one. The fact is that when Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam kept lying in complete peace and calm and didn't show any excitement whatsoever or any fear at the enemy holding his own sword and threatening him to kill. So when he said, "Who can save you?" He said, "Allah." That had such a big impact on the man with the sword that he was overawed and his hand shook with the sheer impact of the greatness of the man who was lying before him. And the sword fell from his hands. So Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam picked up the same sword. He got up and said, "Now tell me, who can save you from my hands?" He said, "Oh my Lord, you can save me from your own hands." He said, "Shame on you. You didn't even learn from me. It's only Allah who can save you." So when this man heard this, then he knew that he was a true man and he accepted Islam. This is the whole story. So some people may relate it, differently, because sometimes these traditions are found differently in different books. You know that traditions of the Holy Prophet were preserved much later after his death, after they started being collected about 200 years from his death. And because the Arabs had a good memory, they were still reliable. But there were so many versions coming in from all various the lines of tradition, that in between there were people who could have forgotten certain things, people with weak memory, and some other things may have happened. Sometimes people might have imagined things, and after a very long time they started believing that this was also there. This happens with everybody, even today. So because of these things, some minor differences crept into the traditions. And these are to be observed by these various versions. And sometimes the author of a particular book himself chooses to be brief for some reasons. He thinks the purpose is served by telling just this much, and he intentionally leaves things out. So I can't tell you why in one particular case somebody has differed with some other person. It has to be investigated.
All I can tell you is that to the best of my knowledge, this tradition is more reliable than the other one.
Thank you.
I've also explained the phenomena for your sake, that you understand how these physicals were collected and why they differed with each other. Yes, no, yes, Dr. Rashid Sahib.
I was trying to say because there are so many people giving me.
First of all, you decide between yourself.
My question is,
Okay?
yes, sir.
You have decided between yourself?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Not the issue. Who will share yourself?
आप साहब चूँकि जर्मनी से आया है इसलिए वो मैं मंडे को वापस जा रहा हूँ इसलिए मैं चाहता हूँ क्या हम बाइबल से अल्लाह ताला के मतलब जो सूरह इखलास है इसका तर्जुमा बाइबल से साबित कर सकते हैं मतलब खुदा ताला एक है उसको किसी ने भी जाना ना ये जाना गया है ये सवाल शायद पहले उसी को
The most perfect description of Allah's unity, which you can't find in the same manner, in the same order, with the same beauty in any other book in the world. Not to mention Bible, anywhere. All books collected together have not defined the unity of God so perfectly and so beautifully as Surah Ikhlas has done it. So why should you try to find that Bible has also mentioned this? You will try in vain. You won't succeed if you really should try that. Why do you say Surah Ikhlas then? Just say, how can you prove the oneness of Allah from Bible? Ask this question. This is a different question from the one you were asking previously. The fact is that to prove oneness of Allah from the Bible is not at all difficult. That is a different thing. The Bible, that is the Old Testament and the New Testament. That is called Bible. Now, first of all, the Old Testament throughout, right from beginning to the end, does not speak of any God other than Allah or any God beside Him. So the testimony of all the prophets of the Bible are against there being a God other than God Himself, or there being any partner. Now, as for the New Testament, we challenge them to prove where Trinity has been mentioned in the Holy Scriptures. The principle involved is this, and this is what I want you to learn. This is more important, and this will be a good avail to you in every debate. Whenever there is an established way of life, if somebody speaks against that established way of life, the burden of proof is on his shoulders, not on the one who believes in that traditional way. If something happens routinely, in general principle, something happens like something. If somebody claims that an exception has taken place, this time it has not happened like this, then the burden of proof always lies on the shoulders of the one who has come with this innovation. So starting from Old Testament, we know the testimony of the whole of prophets in favor of one God. And the Old Testament does not even remotely mention the possibility of there being another God but Allah, or as is called Jehovah. Yes. So when this is the established rule, if an exception is made by some people, a new different claim is made, the burden of proof is on their shoulders, not on our shoulders. They should say that in the New Testament, when Jesus claimed to be the Son of God,
he claimed that there were 2 gods or 3 gods or gods other than Allah. That is for them to prove, and they cannot. Whenever they will try to prove this by any verse of the Holy Bible, there and then you will find, if you read a few verses before and a few verses after, you will find the answer there. So it's not for us to prove, it is for them to prove that the New Testament speaks against the oneness of Allah. This is why the high scholars never say that. In fact, those people who are true scholars among the Christians, they don't make this claim. They say, no, the Bible speaks of one God, and we believe in one God, because they can't escape this. Yet they say that it is 3 in 1 and 1 in 3, and this dilemma is created just because of this difficulty they find in their ways. They know if there was to be revealed to mankind the existence of a God other than this God, why it was so late? After all the prophets had passed and the phenomena had finished according to them. They also believe in a sort of Khatm Nubuwwat. They say all the prophets came and the prophethood finished at the time of Jesus Christ. Then a new institution began to take shape, and that was appearance of God himself in some form or another. In the first appearance, they say it was to be a manifestation of Son of God. In the second coming, it would be God, it was to be God himself, and they are still waiting for the second coming. So all this has led them to difficulties, in fact. They believe all the prophets have passed, and what was prophesied by all these prophets were left in the past. All the prophecies put together do not mention, even remotely, the possibility of there being another God but Allah. So our case is very strong. To break this case, it is up to them to come out with very strong and cogent proof. Yes, Rashid Saab, ultimately, after all.
Sorry, sir, I'm very sorry. 2 days ago, sir, on 26th of July.
Sorry if you are trying to deceive us.
No, not at all. He's my next door neighbor, so I have right over him.
And you are asking him, in the presence of everybody, you attribute to him a claim which he had never made. You said he had consented, and he had not. He was looking at you dumbfounded.
I'm sorry.
And you said, look, there is doing this. That reminded me of a joke. And that was in Punjabi. If you permit me, that I will tell that joke in the vernacular, because it's difficult to translate. There was a mullah who used to go, I'll come to the Punjabi later on. There was a mullah who used to go for early morning walks. And when he passed by the sugarcane field of some other farmer, his hands began to itch for eating sugarcane. And but he was a very pious man. He was a mullah. He could not take anything without permission of the proprietor. So what he did was that he stood there and said, "O Bibi Kamadi, Tanu puche Mullah Qadi, Mullah Qazi, Ganne do panna ki char." Then he said quietly to himself, "Panla pansat." So, in English it would be something like this, that he made a rhyme out of that question answer. He asked the sugarcane field, addressing the sugarcane field, that I, the Maulvi of the village, who is also the justice of the village, Qazi, I ask your permission. Would you permit me to, Panle is very difficult, to pluck 2 or 3 sugar canes from here, and then in a changed voice he would answer himself. He said, all right, take a few, 5 or 7, it's okay. So he used to do it, and the farmer noticed that patch of baldness appearing in one corner. So once, and it was, you know, the sugar cane is found in extremely cold days, particularly they ripe by about 15th of December. And from 15th till 15th of January, they are in the full season. So it was during those days that it happened. The farmer hid himself in the sugarcane field and watched for the whole phenomena to happen before him. So the mullah came and did all this drama. So the farmer came out and he held him. He said, come on, let's go somewhere. Let's go places, as they say. So he took him to a nearby canal, which was extremely cold, and addressed the canal by telling him that I, the poor farmer, ask you a question. Would you please answer? Should I dip the mullah? Should I dip this poor mullah twice or thrice in you? Then he changed his voice and said, do it for 7 or 8 times. I don't mind. So he did it for 7 or 8 times, you know. Vata is more than a dip, you know. If you have not seen anybody having been done, you know, this Vata isn't to him. You can't imagine what Vata means to a man who has gone through this experience. So you were doing this exactly the same thing.
I didn't mean to, honestly. I did not mean to, sir.
If he does it to you, he would not mean either.
Anyway, you speak very beautiful Punjabi. I'm very glad of that. So the question is, 2 days ago, you mentioned Surat Buruj. You said you recite once every week. Would you kindly give us the stress why and would you give us the importance of this surah? Yeah, please.
Importance I have already told you from that very day.
No, I didn't get it.
You need to pay attention to my answer. I was telling the importance of the surah, and at the end of my discourse, I also mentioned in passing that I recite this surah once a week in the morning prayer. So you remembered the last bit and didn't remember the earlier part of it.
No, you mentioned Yom al-Maud and Fa'al lima yurid.
That is in that surah.
And I wanted the explanation, you know.
I explained it there.
Sorry.
Please. Listen to the cassette if you please, and you'll find out the answer. If anything is left then, if you're not satisfied and you still feel something has to be enlarged upon, I would inshallah do it, but find out first what is missing there. Right? So shall we say the prayer now? Yes, please. We have a new cover Muslim from Czechoslovakia, so I welcome him.
Without Zafar,
yes. Assalamu alaikum. अच्छा very happy, most welcome. This now, you know, just before coming to England, you don't know the English. You speak German?
Yes.
All right, well, he would translate it, right? If you can, I hope you can. Or will anybody else have you do that? Oh, yes, yes, yes. First class, come here. The great interpreter. Yes, just come here. Just before I came here, a Czechoslovak
who was working there with some firm, came to see me along with his friends.
Ein Tschechoslowake, der hier ist, der ist mal hierher gekommen und hat ihn, also ist hierher gekommen und hat Mulaqat eingetroffen.
So I told him that whenever I think of Czechoslovakia, it hurts me to think that so far we have not made any gains from Czechoslovakian people for Islam.
Wenn man darüber denkt, dass bis jetzt noch keine Tschechoslowakien Leute bis jetzt hier gesehen hat, dann tut es ihm weh.
So he told me that you can't preach in Czechoslovakia, it's too late now. But what you should do is that there are Czechoslovaks who have migrated to mid-central European countries like Switzerland and Germany. So try your luck with them and then you may find some entry into them.
Hat gesagt, dass in Tschechoslowakien noch also die Leute noch nicht an Glauben bringen könnte, aber die Leute, die raus sind, zu anderen Ländern so, der hat gesagt, er sollte es mit denen versuchen, durch den Weg durchzugehen und nach Tschechoslowakien zu gehen. In Europa.
So Allah has fulfilled that. Before I could instruct the Muballighin, I was very glad to read in the list his name as Czechoslovak Ahmadi, and I was very happy to meet him, to hear of his acceptance of Islam and Ahmadi.
Und dann, bevor er das machen konnte, hat Gott es gemacht und er war very froh, dass sie in der Liste waren. Und da hat er sich richtig gefreut.
Tell him that I am very happy that he is the first one, but I don't want him to remain the only one.
Er ist sehr froh, dass sie die Ersten sind, aber er will nicht, dass sie der Einzige bleiben.
Yes? All right. Tell him I am very happy to meet him.
Er ist ganz froh, euch zu sehen.
Yes, please. Is that so? Already?
Along with a Czechoslovakian teacher who also came to our mosque and who was also close to Ahmadiyya. He has made a good translation and he has copied it in typewriting and given already to someone.
Tell me why.
Wie sind das geschenkt? Weil sie über das geschrieben haben.
Alhamdulillah.
Weil sie das getippt haben.
Yes. खत्म हो गया था सवाल तो अब आपको याद आया हैं क्या हुआ था
आप उस तरफ देख रहे थे मैंने हाथ खड़ा किया था
अभी तो देखे ही नहीं
जी जी फ्रांस से
बाकी लोग फाटना है तो एक छोटा सवाल रखते हैं
बिल्कुल छोटा सा ये जो रुपया होता है मिसाल के तौर पर जुए में जीता हुआ या किसी इस किस्म का ये हराम है क्योंकि ये इंसानी कोशिश से नहीं ये जायज़ नहीं है अगर यही गिरा पड़ा मिल जाए तो उसके बारे में क्या है वो भी बात कोई चीज़ रास्ते में मिल जाती है गिरी पड़ी और क्या उस पर
उसके लिए जो different jurists or different schools of jurists have different opinion about this, what to do. Some say that you pick that money which you find on the way and go on declaring it in mosques and telling everybody that I have got that money. Some say no, not in mosque because it's not permitted to declare things in mosque which you have found outside. But somehow make it known on the beat of drum that I found that much money. And some say that the person who finds such a money should continue doing it for 2 years. Some say for 10 years. Some give even a longer time. And even if nobody comes to claim that money after say 15 years or so, then you can use it if it is worth anything left. You know, because of the inflation nowadays, and because of the money you will spend on making it known to the whole people, on advertising. In fact, by the time you finish, you will be bankrupt yourself. So these are the things applicable to a certain period. And they inferred these things according to the local situations. The fact is that in principle, it is the duty of a person to deposit such things with the lost property office. And it is then a community affair. If somebody wants to get that money and he is the proprietor, he should prove it to the office people and get his things back. It is not a personal property at all. So this is the practice in Rabwa. In Jalsa Salana, whenever people lose their things, everybody picks them up. He goes straight to the lost property office of Rabwa and deposits things there and forgets about it. He doesn't do it in hope of somebody not coming, even after 15 years, and he's enjoying that too. And this is why, because of this distorted opinion, there are such instances quoted in the history that some people used to say in the mosque that 10 rupees, and slowly and very quietly they would say, I have found. Nobody would know what 10 rupees is, why he's saying 10 rupees. So there are jokes about it, that people wanted to make those things halal for them, permissible. So they went about these tricks and tried somehow to misappropriate the money. The best thing is to realize that is not yours. That is the first thing. And it will not be yours. Forget about it. So deposit it where it belongs and forget. Have you found anything, by the way? Huh? आपने को मिला आपको पैसा वैसा कहीं से? हैं? आप ही लिया? अब पूछ रहे हैं। अच्छा। अच्छा। कहते ज़्यादा देर में भी हजम नहीं हुआ। अच्छा जी नमाज ठीक है जज़ाकल्लाह।